Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm your canine guru. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about bringing a new dog into a home with pre-existing animals. Now, for the simplicity of the video, I will be referring to a new dog. However, this really can count for any animal you're bringing into the new home. And I'm also going to be referring to you having a pre-existing dog, but again, you could have pre-existing cats in the home or a pre-existing rabbit. It's just for simplicity, that's the way I'm going to do it. So the first thing you've got to think about is the whys. Why do you want a second dog? What is the reason behind it? Is it because there's a particular breed that you've always wanted and you've decided now's the time to get it? Is it because maybe you've recently lost a dog and you feel that it would be right for your new dog, for your pre-existing dog, to maybe have a new friend? So, you've got to think about why do you want the second dog? And also think about why now? Why did I not get, for instance, 2 dogs when I got my first one? So, that once you've answered those, you can then move on to this next section that you need to think about, which is the extra cost involved. Can you financially support a second dog? You've got to think about the vet fees and the pet insurance. Some breeds to insure can be really, really high. An example would be a German Shepherd. You're looking at probably paying around £70 to £80 a month on pet insurance. So can you realistically afford that? As well as the food cost. Especially if you get a larger breed of dog, they're going to have to eat more. You also got to think about the equipment costs, such as, collars, toys, leads, bedding, as well as, if you've got a dog with long fur or curly coated, such as a Bichon Frise, the grooming costs, and how regularly would your dog need to go for a groom. I recommend even dogs with very short fur, like Staffies and, greyhounds and so on, that they still go, even if it's only every 6 months, just to keep their coat healthy and clean, and to keep their nails short, clean their ears. You've also got to think about the purchase price. It can be very expensive to buy a new puppy, or if you decide you want to adopt a dog, there's still normally an adoption fee of around £200 to £300, depending on where you get it from. So those are the other things you've got to think about, as well as any costs for a dog walker or a doggy daycare centre, and also the training costs, especially if you get a puppy. I recommend, even if you get an adult dog, that even if it already knows the commands, that you still spend the first kind of few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, going to a training school. The reason being is that training is not just about teaching your dog what's right and what's wrong and teaching it commands. It's also about building a bond with your dog. How can you build a bond, and it's the same way kind of when you read a book to your child, it's about building that bond. So those are all the sorts of costs that you've got to think about. Can you realistically afford them? The next thing you've got to think about is the what and the where. So what breed do you want? Just because you have one breed of a particular type doesn't necessarily mean that getting the same breed is going to work. There are actually some breeds of dog that for some reason don't get on very well with dogs of the same breed. They can get a bit argumentative with that, which is very strange. I think that's very fascinating, really. But so you've got to think about what breed, what age. There's really a pro to getting a puppy is that it's very new. You can kind of teach it what you want to teach it. It can, how much it's been socialized and so on. But the only downfall with getting a puppy, especially if you've got an older dog, is they might find the puppies a little bit too much. They might get irritated by it. The same way that, if you babysit a small child, when that child goes home, or even parents with young children will know that by the evening you're flat out exhausted because there's just so much energy, and your dog will feel the same way. So, and then a sort of a pro of getting an older dog is that a lot of the training and socialising has already been done. Obviously, sometimes there can be behavioural difficulties if it wasn't done properly, but nothing that can't be fixed. But that's that's a pro. You won't have to be quite so vigorous on that. But the only downfall is that, just like when you first move in with someone new, when you move in with your partner or something, it can be quite difficult in the first few weeks and first few months, because there are lots of things that your partner might do that you don't do, and you all have your own habits of how you live and what you do, and so really that's what you're kind of thinking about, is actually what habits and things does your dog do that you might find it normal, but actually it might irritate another dog. So and that's just normal part of kind of living together. So there's pros and cons to getting a puppy or a bigger dog, or an older dog, sorry. And you've also got to think about the sex. I personally always recommend getting the opposite sex of the dog you currently have, just because there seems to be two male dogs have a slightly high tendency to be more argumentative. Same with females, female on female, male on male, particularly if you don't neuter your dogs. So that's why I always recommend getting the opposite sex, but really make sure that at least one of your dogs are neutered if you do get the opposite sex, to avoid unwanted litters, unwanted pregnancy. I'm going to do a video probably at some point talking about the dangers of just breeding your dog without doing proper research, proper training and having any experience in it, because there are lots of risks involved. But I'll do a video about that at some point for you. And the other thing you've got to think about is what location. Where are you getting your dog from? Are you going to a breeder? Are you going to an adoption centre? I would say very sternly, I would never recommend getting a puppy from a pet store. I will do again another video on this a little bit later on, but to give you kind of a brief overview, you've got to think that puppies from pet stores often are unwell or become unwell because they've not been properly quarantined and cared for. You've often got behavioural problems that might come with it, either due to poor breeding, but also due to lack of socialisation during those key few weeks. They're stuck in a box in a shop waiting for someone to pick them. They're not in your home learning about the world, learning about what's going on, what sounds mean what, and so you can often find that puppies that come from pet stores have some behavioural problems and some health problems. So that's why I don't recommend from pet stores. But those are what you've got to think about, the what's and the where. Now you've got to think about, do you actually have the time to have a second dog? You've got to think about the socialising and the training aspect, especially if you get a puppy. Do you have time to take it to training classes every week? Do you have time to make sure that it has as many good, positive socialisation experiences as possible? You've also got to allow time for your pre-existing dog to create a bond with your new dog. So this is something else that you've got to think about. Do I have time to allow that? And just general care and exercise. You might have an older dog that doesn't need as much exercise now, but bringing in a younger dog, that dog might need more exercise in the future than your current dog, and can you provide that? So that's why you've got to think about, do I have the time to put into taking on a new dog? And the last thing is about actually how can you prevent jealousy between your current dog and your new dog. I will do a thorough video on actually how to properly introduce a new dog into your home, probably within the next few uploads. But as a brief overview, I would say to help prevent jealousy, I would provide a quiet area for each dog. For instance, having a bed either side, opposite ends of the living room or in different rooms, so that they're not always on top of each other. They have an area they can go to. Don't force interaction. Don't force them to hang out together. If they want to hang out, that's fine. But on the same token, they can also have time away. I would feed separately, just because feeding can be quiet, especially if you take on an older dog, sometimes from a shelter if they've been starved. or abandoned, they might feel like they need to protect their food. So I would always recommend feed separately. Even if you've had dogs that live together for years, I still wouldn't recommend feeding them all together. And provide the pre-existing dog with the same level of care and attention that it always received. A lot of people make the mistake of they coo and they cuddle and they love this new puppy and they're playing with it and all they want to do is spend time with it, and actually that other dog that they have feels left out and feels like, actually, I'm not wanted anymore, and so therefore that can create jealousy. So make sure that you're providing your pre-existing dog with just the same level of attention and care as you've always done. I hope this has given you a little insight into the things you need to consider when bringing home a second dog. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe and share with your friends and family. I really do appreciate all the support. If you have any suggestions on what you would like me to cover next, either a particular breed or anywhere kind of within canine care, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye bye.